Wow, has a lot happened in just the one day a week I take off from this YouTube channel. There are so many things to talk about, guys, but first we're going to talk about this whole dock worker strike problem, because one thing we talk about a lot on this channel is inflation. This could potentially make inflation 10 times worse than it is right now. And you know, also something else I saw happen, which I will cover in my next video, I promise, is going to be all the insurance fraud that's happening in Florida right now. But I wanted to talk about this first because it's a more pressing issue. So if you want to see that video, make sure you are subscribed. I will be talking about it tomorrow. But first thing is first, the dock workers strike, okay? This is an entire East Coast of the United States problem right now. All of the ports on the entire East Coast of the United States, as of me making this video, are shut down, guys, due to a dock workers strike. So you have about 45,000 dock workers across the entire East Coast that are not working right now, and none of these supplies are going to be moving. And this is problematic from multitudes of different reasons that you can think about, but the big one is obviously inflation. You know, people are worried about what's going to happen to the cost of all the goods that are being just held up in these ports that aren't moving right now. So the reason that this strike is even happening to begin with is because these dock workers are supposed to be getting a new contract in order to secure their future pay as well as their jobs itself. In fact, that's one thing that they're worried about. What these dock workers want is they want a 77% increase in pay over the next 5 years. And even just as important as the pay, they also want to have a ban on automation at their ports, which seems to be the biggest threat that they're worried about. You know, a lot of these dock workers that they talk to are worried about all the different types of automation that is coming into play right now. Just like every other business, they're trying to replace people with robots. Needless to say, it's in the best interest of almost everybody involved here to get this situation and contract resolved as soon as possible, mainly from the standpoint that inflation is going to tick up. The cost of goods that are sitting in these containers are going to skyrocket if they're not able to be delivered in a timely fashion. And a lot of things can expire, you know. Think of any fresh produce or goods that have a shelf life that are sitting in these containers can easily expire before this whole port strike is over with. But really, this applies to anything that's imported. We're talking cars, we're talking electronics, we're talking pretty much everything, because the United States doesn't really make anything anymore. So we're at the mercy of imports, and all of these containers are just sitting there waiting to be unloaded and sent to their suppliers. And think about this, guys. For now, this is only on the East Coast of the United States, but if this were to spread to the West Coast, because they are diverting some container ships to come over this way already because of this, but imagine if this happens over here too on the West Coast, simultaneously that it's happening on the East Coast. It will be absolutely devastating for this country. And already right now, they're saying this is costing the United States about $5 billion for every day that this strike goes on, which I guess for the government is a drop in the bucket, since they operate in the magnitude of multiple trillions now when it comes to all of the bills they like to give us. So it's also going to be interesting to see how quickly our governmental leaders step in to try and help resolve this situation as well, if at all. Because as of me shooting this video, nobody on that front has done anything. You haven't seen the president do anything. You haven't seen the vice president do anything. You haven't seen any Congress people do anything. But by the time you watch this, that might be changed. And for anybody curious, I'm walking in Paradise Beach Park over here in Tiburon. Today we're going through an extreme heat wave in California, actually for the whole week, and it's almost 100 degrees here. Out of all the years I've been coming up this way, I have never seen it get this hot here, guys. It is absolutely insane that this is happening. So it's already a little welcome back to Miami for me now that my trip home is getting closer. But you know, the AI and the automation and all of these things are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the threat of people losing jobs right now. In fact, a lot of people are even more concerned about losing jobs over all the illegal immigration this country has been seeing lately. And of course, according to a lot of the economists, they say, well, these people aren't really taking jobs away from native-born US people. And this is one of the quotes that one of these economists says. Overall, the consensus is very strong that there are not significant costs to US-born workers from immigration, at least the type of immigration we have historically had in the US. So there's a key phrase in there, at least not the type of immigration we have historically had in the US. Well, clearly, we've seen over the past few years that the type and level of immigration that we've had in this country has been unprecedented and like nothing we've ever seen when it comes to the invasion of our US borders. You know, there's plenty of videos on YouTube now that you guys can go see of different towns across the country that have absolutely exploded in population because of all the immigrants that have just showed up recently. And the locals in these places are completely outraged because it does take away their jobs and exponentially increases the cost of living, especially the cost of housing in those areas as well. So most people aren't too happy about this. Now they say overall immigration is good for the economy, which it is in the sense that the more people you have that are producing and generating any sort of income or goods or service is going to be beneficial to the economy. Also, the influx of immigrants that we had over the past few years, they say, has helped tame the labor shortage because clearly there's a lot of open jobs that nobody wanted to take, and immigrants came in and filled a bunch of those, and so they saved the day. Also, according to some research from the National Bureau of Economic Research, they found out that immigrants are 80% more likely to become entrepreneurs than native workers, and a recent surge in immigrants to the U.S. is expected to add $8.9 trillion or 3.2% to the nation's GDP over the next decade, according to the Congressional Budget Office. So, like I've told you guys in previous videos, this is the proof right here. This is the proof that all this immigration, whether legal or illegal, which the vast majority of it has been illegal over the past few years with people just pouring in, is good for the economy, okay? So there's a big incentive for the current administration in charge to allow this to happen because it makes the GDP figures, which are basically meaningless, look good. Because when these figures that are artificially boosted by things like this look good, because of something illegal happening and people pouring in here, that is not the picture of health for our economy. That doesn't mean that things are going great with our country. It just means that they're allowing something to happen that shouldn't be happening in order to artificially boost the numbers, which is pretty much how our entire system is run now, in case you haven't noticed. And they say that the area of immigration that can affect native-born workers here in the US the most are in parts of the economy where people are working low education jobs or low qualification jobs that pretty much anyone can get. And obviously there's a lot of Americans that need those jobs because that's the only type of job they can get. Maybe because they have some sort of criminal record. Maybe it's because they never completed high school. Who knows what it is, but regardless, they need that job. And the fact of the matter is, guys, people can come here, whether legally or illegally, and just use a friend's social security number or get an ITIN number and get a job. Because a lot of people will say, well, companies or big corporations won't hire people who are here illegally, but that's not true. Because if all they need to do is get an ITIN number, that's good enough in the government's eyes to apply for a job and start paying taxes. And if that's all a company needs to hire someone, then someone can literally just show up here today, get one of those numbers, and start working tomorrow in theory. I mean, if you want to know if immigration affects people getting jobs and how many jobs are available for locals, just go ask people in Springfield, Ohio. You know, I saw a video about this and they were talking about how they opened up this new factory over there and they're bringing in a bunch of Haitians, not even from this country, to work there before even giving the locals a chance to even apply or work at this factory. So obviously that's a huge problem, guys, and that should not be allowed. It's not something that these companies should be able to get away with. I don't really know whose fault it is, if it's the company's fault for bringing these people in or the local government. I have no idea who's responsible, but regardless, it has to stop. Now, as tough as it is to get a job right now, people who have a job are in trouble too, because there's been so many layoffs. In fact, CVS, they just announced a brand new round of layoffs this week. They're going to be letting go of 3,000 employees nationwide. And according to CVS, the reason they're doing this is because of continued disruption, regulatory pressures, and evolving consumer needs and expectations. So they can pretty much say whatever they want, and all these excuses that these companies give of why they lay everybody off, because it doesn't really matter. You know, the point is all these people are losing the jobs, and those jobs are jobs that are just gone. And people now have to find a new job, compete with immigrants, both legal and illegal, at the same time, and contend with potentially AI and automation taking their current job as well. So people in the job market are really getting slammed, guys. You know, it was crazy how much things were in favor of job seekers just a few years ago, when it seemed like employees had all the leverage, okay? And just a couple years later now, it seems like the tables have turned completely in favor of the employers again. And guess what? These layoffs that CVS are performing, these aren't just like people working at the stores. These are high-level corporate jobs, and it equates to 1% of CVS's workforce. So you're talking breadwinners of families getting laid off here. You're not talking somebody making minimum wage as a floor associate. And in some way, you could say that's even worse, just because when you fire somebody who makes a lot of money, that's a lot of money that person is no longer bringing in and is able to spend out into the economy, and could be equal to several lower paying jobs being lost. So in my mind, say, you know, one high paying job is worth 4 low paying jobs. You know, you can easily multiply this number. It's like losing 12,000 low paying jobs. So everybody's going to be impacted by this, will be notified apparently by the end of this week. So if you're somebody out there who works for CVS and you get hit with this, let me know. Let me know what ends up happening, because I actually have somebody else who works at Cisco that I want to talk about that reached out to me, who also was laid off recently in this announcement that I've been talking about on the channel. He was just laid off on September 16th, and he will be employed with Cisco until November 16th. So they basically gave a 60-day notice for him. So he's been the head of AI, data, and analytics based in Seattle, Washington. Now I need to get some more info from him about the layoff and what he plans to do next, but it's like real people are being impacted by this, guys. Real people who watch this channel are seeing me talk about this and seeing that this is actually happening to them or someone they know or their family in real time. It's not like these are all just stories far and away of people you never heard of. These are you guys who are being impacted by this. And this is part of the reason why all these unemployment figures that we've talked about over the past couple of weeks are just completely bogus, guys. I've been blowing the lid off this stuff to show you that the unemployment numbers are actually looking a lot better than they really are, for a lot of different reasons, because people fall off of unemployment after 27 weeks. You also have people that have been unemployed for over a year that are no longer counted as unemployed. That's a big problem as well. But one of my other viewers, his name is Jordan, and he used to work for the BLS. They're the ones that put together all these unemployment statistics to begin with. And he also worked for the unemployment office in Louisiana for quite some time. All in all, he has almost 30 years experience working with the BLS and unemployment offices, guys. So he knows a thing or two about what's happening in the current situation with unemployment. This is what he told me. He says the official BLS monthly job estimates have been off since 2011, when all of the current employed statistics were centralized to Washington, D.C. He says before 2011, the current employment statistics was done by state civil servants at the local and state level. And this was how it worked for 75 years. And the employment data for the states and nationally was accurate from 1935 to 2010, with benchmarked revisions running at an average of 99.6% accuracy. But now that all the data is centralized and comes directly from Washington, D.C., that's no longer the case. At the federal level, the current error rate is 4% to 6% off, which can be anywhere between 4.5 to 8 million jobs, guys. Think about how much that can swing the actual numbers, right? And at the local level, when you're talking about certain smaller regions of the country, it can be up to 200% inaccurate, 200% off of the real numbers. And here's the problem. You know, all this unemployment data is directly used in all of the decisions that are made by the federal government and the Federal Reserve. This influences things like the inflation data, it influences things like the cost of living raises, it influences whether or not the Fed cuts or raises interest rates. Every single thing about this economy is influenced by the unemployment data. In fact, we know that the Fed is looking mainly at the unemployment data right now more than inflation, because they're basically, you know, washing their hands of inflation, saying, oh, we're not worried about that. We're keeping a closer eye on unemployment now. And the fact that all of this unemployment data is off by so much right now, and all of these decisions are being based on false data, imagine what kind of implications and consequences this is going to have on our economy moving forward. And here's some of the worst parts about all of this, okay? Since it's all done automatically now, another way that jobs have been eliminated all through automation, this is part of the issue that's making the unemployment claims process so inefficient and so inaccurate. Because think about this, when you go to make an unemployment claim, by phone or by computer, if the claim is not filled out properly the first time, then the claim is automatically shut down, and it can take up to 14 weeks or more to correct a simple problem. And that also means that somebody who's making the claim isn't getting paid in the meantime. And because everything's automated and you don't have to really talk to anybody anymore, the system makes it easier for people to commit fraud and collect unemployment claims fraudulently. Jordan estimates that fraudulent unemployment claims alone now cost the US taxpayers $163 billion per year, guys. That's insane. I might even have Jordan on the show, just like I had Mitch, in order to give you guys a fuller picture of what's really going on with all of this, because it is absolutely crazy how many people aren't being counted as unemployed, how many people are no longer receiving benefits, and they're saying that everything is fine, don't worry about it, as well as all the major decisions being made by our local and state governments and the Federal Reserve based on all this phony data. This is going to cause big problems for us in the very near future. So if you're somebody out there trying to get a job or having problems making unemployment claims, or if you've seen local jobs start hiring more immigrants rather than people who are local and have lived in the community for a long time, let us know what you guys are actually seeing out there in the real world, because all those comments help me form an even clearer picture of what's really going on. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.